All right, so in this lesson, I'm going to be going over some basic AutoCAD settings. Um, so I have AutoCAD open, but sometimes you'll find that the drawing that you need to do is in metric and you don't know how to do it. So AutoCAD's kind of different than a lot of other softwares. You actually have to type in startup. And then you push enter on your keyboard on the command line below. Now, it defaults typically to 3. Don't ask me really why they came up with these numbers, but if it's 3, what happens is when it opens up AutoCAD, it just goes right to this window. So we want to make sure that we type in startup, push enter, and then 1. Now, unfortunately, we're going to have to close AutoCAD out and reopen it. All right. So then I'll go to my desktop. I've got a link here. And this time when AutoCAD opens up, it's going to ask me, do I want this imperial? And imperial is essentially inches and feet or metric. Now I'm going to go ahead and just default to inches here and then say OK. So once you have your AutoCAD open, in my lessons, I work with a couple different options that I have on. So you'll see on the very top, you've got this row here, and there's a white arrow here, and you can minimize this or have it open, and I'm gonna leave it with everything showing. But a couple things that I'm gonna need to do here. So there's a gear on the ribbon below, and I'm gonna make sure it's on drafting and annotation. All right. And while I'm down here, you're gonna notice that some items that are already highlighted here. To add or subtract for the little icons down here, I'm gonna go to the very far right in customization. So if you need to screenshot or pause, certainly do that. But you'll notice some things here, and it may not default to it. For example, you want to have your line weight. All right, so you want to select that line weight. Now you'll notice that the moment I click it, it comes on the bottom, but it's not actually active until I go down here and turn it on. Secondly, the thing that you're going to want to make sure that you have is your dynamic input. Now, if I move my mouse around here, as I'm doing now, it's just the cursor. But if I would select the dynamic input, and that's going to be make sure that it's here, dynamic input, I'm going to turn it on. The moment I turn it on, you'll see that when I come in here, now that is going to show me that line. So I take a line tool, and there it is. Now, if my dynamics input is not on, and I do my line put, there's nothing there. All right, so my got that turned on. And then the other thing you're going to want to do is go to your the grid over here. And if you don't see the arrow here, sometimes I think the Macs are a little different. You want to hit the snap settings. And I typically do not use my snap on. And that snap is essentially every time you move your mouse or you add a line, it's doing it whatever increment you want to. And I don't want to do that. So I'm going to have that off, and meaning that it's not highlighted, but my polar tracking is going to be on. Now, I think it defaults to 90. I'm not sure, but that'll work. But typically I do 45. But if you notice, like I have this drawing up for a reason. This is in increments of 30 degrees. So 180 minus 120, 60 degrees, and these would be 30. So I might on that drawing have increments of 30. And what that means is when I move my mouse here, so I clicked a line, and I like to either, you can type in on this dynamic input, or I can just put my mouse on the command line. If I would type in 0,0, enter, and I'm going to zoom out, right, with my mouse, it's going to highlight at that increment. And then once it does so, I can just type in, for example, if I wanted 6 inches, I would type in 6, enter, and there it is, right? The other thing we're going to want to do here is make sure that I have the cube. If you don't see this cube here, it's very handy. It kind of centers everything for you. You can access it multiple different ways. There's this above on the window. I can actually do it here. We're just going to leave it on top. And the other thing you're going to want to do is if typically you only see one ribbon above, you're going to want to make sure that you have something called the show menu bar on. And when you hit the show menu bar, you get a whole nother row here, and we're going to use the dimension style and a lot of things here. So if it defaults, it's not there. You want to make sure that it says show menu bar, and there it's going to be. All right. And you'll notice, though, in the view, then you've got a lot of different views here. So you'll see all these views here, top and So there's many different ways to access all of this. And so those are the basic settings that you're going to want to follow for my lessons. Last thing is here, you'll see the properties. If you don't see the properties, there's many different ways to do it. For example, here's a line. I hit escape and then I click back on it. I can right click and hit properties. Or worst case, I can always on my command line, just type in properties. The command line on the very bottom is going to be very helpful for you. And so there's my properties. And so that's just a quick overview of some of the settings that you're going to need if you're going to be watching and following along with my videos.